My name is Katalin Toth. I used to work in Inspire since 2000, from 2004 till 2012, I think. So I was basically a member of the Inspire data specification support team of the JRC. And after 2012, when let's say all the first versions or the first specifications were out, I decided to change and to go to a new field, which is the Common Agriculture Policy. And let's say from that, it's a little bit personal what I am saying now, that from that moment my life has dramatically changed. Because meanwhile in Inspire there was, let's say, a constant, little by little, but grow. Ever since I am in the Common Agricultural Policy, there are ups and downs, and it's really like that. But before I start with the presentation, I would like to ask some questions. I am quite sure that each of you has heard about the Common Agricultural Policy. I don't know how many of you have heard about the land parcel identification system. Maybe you can raise your hands. So not so many persons, it's interesting. Because then maybe my second other question is irrelevant, because I wanted to ask that how many of you are in contact with those people who manage this land parcel identification system. So one, two, very, very good. I am not surprised on Spain, because actually in Spain the land parcel identification system is based on cadastre. That's why Amani should know about that. So, okay, then let's start with the presentation itself. So I try to give some context of the Common Agricultural Policy, because without that it will be very difficult to understand the state of the art and where the problems are. Because actually this could be a domain where the methodology of Inspire and also some specifications could be very well used. But there are obstacles, and that's why let's start with the... okay. So let's start with the presentation. So I will give some input about the Common Agricultural Policy. Then I will speak about the information system which supports the implementation of the Common Agricultural Policy. Then I try to show where the Common Agricultural Policy could meet with Inspire. Let's say two nice pieces of the European legislation. And then look into the technical issues, how Inspire could be used in Ajax. And then finally something about the perspectives, just to finish on a positive note. So about the Common Agricultural Policy. We should perhaps know that this is the most ancient common policy where practically the member states give their authority to the Union to regulate, let's say, this domain. And it is a very high political agenda, because it affects 14 million farmers in Europe. And it is about money, because farmers receive payments. And as I said, it's the most ancient. It was launched in 1962. There were a number of reforms during its existence. So if we go into, let's say, to the evaluation of the policy, so practically the amount what we are talking about, it is 58 billion euros per year. And out of this 58, 40 goes for direct aids. It is important. And then about the structure. Why at the beginning of the policy the payment was done based on the production? If the farmer produced something, then they got some money. And there are these legendary overproduction stories, the heaps and hills of butter and so on. So it didn't really work out. And little by little, the policy went into the direction of decoupled payment. It means that the farmers get payments anyway regarding whatever that farmer is producing. And so there was several reform, and as you see, practically less and less less money went to the coupled support, which is this blue line, and practically the decoupled support came into the place where the farmer received practically subsidies for the agricultural activities, so for breeding animals or farming the land. And then in 2013 there was the last reform which said that we had to bring into the common agricultural policy the environmental aspect. And this is important because again the structure of the payment has changed, but I will come to that later. So again it's let's say all the reforms, so I skip it. And now I came to the point to speak about the information tool which is supporting the implementation of the Common Agricultural Policy. It is called Integrated Administration and Control System. This is a tool or a system which has to be implemented in each member state. It's not a common system which is run by the Commission. Each member state has its own system. There are some regulations, so the whole architecture of the Common Agricultural Policy and the governance differs very much of that what you are perhaps used in Inspire. Meanwhile, in Inspire, the process was, let's say, a kind of bottom-up. There was an agreement between the experts on the content of the specifications and so on. And then, based on the guidelines, the legal acts have been derived. In Common Agricultural Policy, the scenario is completely different. All the agreements are done at political level. Member states negotiate practically the priorities, also, let's say, some rough direction of implementation, and then some regulations are issued. And these regulations are now accepted or adopted by the Council and the Parliament, before only by the Council. And once there are the regulations, then based on the regulations, the Commission tries to issue some guidelines which help the implementation. So it's really the other way around. And practically all the legislative framework doesn't say anything very strong about the implementation. It just outlines what should be done, but no reference to the organizational setup or to the IT modalities of the implementation. The only thing which is said that there must be an IT tool, and this is the Ajax. So, what about the Ajax? The legislation outlines some, let's say, basic components of the Ajax, that it should contain of some subsystems. They call it by this term the subsystem, and these subsystems serve different functionalities. So the farmers have to make the applications. So there is this application and payment subsystem because farmers can submit their claim for each year. This process is repeated in each year. And then, based on the claims and also on some controls, finally, the authority calculates the payment, and the payment is being done. Of course, as I said, it should be controlled. Everything should be controlled. So there is a subsystem for the controls. Then, who is eligible for the payment? The farmers. So there is a register for the farmers. Then there is a strange thing, this entitlement register. This doesn't apply in each country. This apply only mainly in the using the old terminology in the old member states and in Slovenia. That the farmers are not directly based on the territory or the area of the land what they are cultivating, but they should have also some entitlements in order to bring in some historical rights from the past. And then, here is what we will speak about, the land parcel identification system, which is basically the spatial management tool, or sometimes there is a common definition as the GIS part of IAPS. So it is there. So there is one more subsystem that I didn't show in this figure, and it is an animal register. But actually animals are not really subject of registration based on localization, or maybe indirectly yes, because they are linked to the farmers and to the sites where this activity is carried out. So as I said, historically the GIS part was placed in the land parcel identification system. But it's not true anymore, because the control part also uses very much spatial data. And from 2013, the legislation introduced a new concept, and it is the geospatial application of the farmers. It means that even the farmers should deal with spatial data when they claim for the subsidies. And this is also changing a little bit the scenario. So concerning the land parcel identification system, so the main subject of the system is to localize the farm area, for which practically the farmers can submit a claim, and also identify it in an unambiguous way, because of course one piece of land can be paid only once, so it's obvious. Now the land parcel identification system in each member state is being created and maintained using orthoimagery. In some cases when the basis is, for example, the cadastre, nevertheless the orthoimagery is used in the background. And it is also important at controls. And there are some feature types that are really stated in the legal text, but what should be included in the land parcel identification system. Of course, the most obvious is this reference parcel, which is practically the container of the land which can be claimed. But on the top of that, and this is the result of the reform in 2013, the land parcel identification system should also contain the agricultural area, and agricultural area by definition of the law, there are practically 3 or maybe 4 types. So arable land, permanent crop, permanent pasture, and sometimes people say a forest, which is again a kind of permanent pasture, but it is a sensitive, environmentally sensitive permanent pasture. So it must be mapped. So spatial representation should be attached also to agricultural area. And then there is a new concept, ecological focus area, which are some elements which provide ecosystem services. And this is practically the substance of greening, OPCAP, that some of the payments, actually 30% of the payments, are somehow dependent on the existence of the ecological focus areas, and also in some cases of crop diversification. So, and as I said, in integrated control system, again, orthoimagery is used because whenever it's possible, the on-the-spot check is being done using imagery. Only in extreme cases, when it's not possible, people go to do the controls on the field. And then I said the geospatial aid application, which is becoming mandatory now also for the farmers. Usually the authorities provide geometries for the farmers that they can approve, tick that, okay, I approve that this is it. But the farmers are nevertheless free to override that and provide their own geometries. So it's very interesting that such people will deal with spatial data. So, as I said, greening is the point where Inspire and the Common Agriculture Area could meet. Because so far there was, let's say, two parallel lives. If you remember the negotiation phase, the inception phase of Inspire, there was a discussion whether to include a land parcel identification system in Inspire. And finally the decision was not. And the main argument why it was decided not to include, because the paying agencies who are in charge of running the system in the member states were very much against, and they said, we cannot do that because we are handling sensitive data, personal data and financial data. Okay? So, why I say that now there is an opportunity to go ahead in hand. We know the scope of Inspire directive very well. What about the cap? One of the current regulation in Chapter 3 is called Payment for Agricultural Practices Beneficial for the Climate and the Environment. Once it is said like that, how does it relate to that? I think it's a logical operation, which must be seen by people. Nevertheless, lawyers have never said this. No one dares to say that because of this and this, now Inspire also applies to cap. So this is not happening.
They don't want to say.
No,
yeah.
they don't want to. No,
Yeah,
nobody
that's
has the
clear.
courage to say that. So basically, what is happening that it is again up to the member states. If a member states want to, then they can apply Inspire principles also for the common agricultural policy. So there was an idea in 2013. Since it is like that, let's try to have a little bit the process and do something for the conversion. So, as I said, then we decided to give a little bit of push into that direction and to see how to deal with this environmental aspect. And especially, this is said that it is a nonsense that in common agricultural policy now there are plenty of feature types, plenty of processes where environment must step into the game. Then why the paying agencies should repeat all the data collection, the maintenance, the organization and so on. So we said that instead of collecting information anew, use the infrastructure. Inspire is there. A lot of things can be used from Inspire. Okay, if it's obvious, now Amalia can tell that. But land cover is basically the main discriminator for payment. Well, what is on the land? And it is based on land cover categories. Also the land use. Agriculture is the main land use category. And also some subcategories of land use are there. Then, if you say land parcel identification system, the parcels themselves cannot be taken as a specific area management zones, farmers manage their land, and also payments and all the claims, all the reports are based on that. So it could be also fit into that, the reference parcel could be fit there. And then, of course, we are also dealing with agricultural facilities. Again, it should come. But the story doesn't end there. So if we go further, then of course there are also some other things that can come into the cap because of the greening, and it is not exhaustive what I put here, but even administrative units. Some criterion, for example, whether a certain percentage of greening must be reached in a country or in a region is calculated on the basis of the administrative units. You need the infrastructure. Transport network seems to be strange, but as I said, the subject of payment is the agricultural area. If a new road is being built, of course, the agricultural area becomes smaller. It could be very easy to use all the infrastructure for the controls. Hydrography is the same, also for greening. There is a special ecological focus area type, riparian vegetation, or also there is the protected sites. Where to take all these? Or there are some payments based on areas with natural constraint. And one of the natural constraints can be the soil type. Then where to take that, if not from the infrastructure? So this is something what we wanted to explain to that community, to the paying agencies, and frequently the paying agencies contract out the maintenance of the land parcel identification system. So we try to explain to them that since they are new requirement, try to use the infrastructure. And then we decided that, okay, we will also show that how to do that from technical point of view. Because there are benefits, I think that I have already mentioned them. And of course, there was also when the inspired data specifications were developed, the common agriculture policy was kept in mind in many teams as a use case. So people who are working in that domain were participating in some of the thematic working groups for cadastre, for also imagery, for agricultural facilities. I think in these three there were really people from that community. So that was a good basis for going ahead and do commonly. So we said that there are many things which were being inspired, and little by little it can be introduced also in CAP. We had some success and we had failures. One of the success stories was, for example, that standards were sneaking in the common agriculture policy, geospatial standards, which is good. Then we also started to use, let's say, this use case and model-driven approach. It was not so positively taken. Then for data exchange, because there is